listening to the Straight to Video podcast with Rob Lane.
So, how was your Halloween? Any good? Gotta admit, I am feeling it a little today. We always get dozens of kids come round to the house and we try our best to get things all looking spooky, but this year was a tough one. I think I'm slowing down a little. I'm sure I'll bounce back and do it all again next year though. But speaking of Halloween, I want to say thanks to everyone who has supported Straight to Video during the October Halloween season. I think STV did some cool stuff with some horror-themed podcast episodes and the new Trick or Treat single. I always feel I want to do more, but I'm happy with how everything worked out this year, so I hope you enjoyed it too. But anyway, the show goes on and the podcast episodes keep coming, and on today's show I was thrilled to chat to Carol Decker, lead singer of one of the biggest pop rock bands of the late 80s, T'Pau. Best known for the hits Heart and Soul and the massive China in Your Hand, both from the, get this, the 4 times platinum album Bridge of Spies in 1987. The band originally broke in the US when the single Heart and Soul was featured in a Pepe Jeans commercial which pushed it into the Billboard Top 10, and shortly afterwards it would repeat the success in the UK. Now I'm always intrigued and interested as to how bands made their way to success during the 80s. Back then a band would appear on Top of the Pops seemingly out of nowhere with a hit single, and from then on they would become a household name. Without the internet and social media back then, it was hard to follow a band's journey to the top unless you perhaps caught them on tour with someone else or maybe read a small article in a magazine, so it was great to talk to Carol all about this. During our talk, we touch on her time at school, first joining a band and how her relationship with her T'Pau songwriting partner Ronnie Rogers began, and the band's initial road to success. It's a great story and I hope you enjoy hearing all about it. Before we dive in, a reminder that our friends Dead Skull Coffee are offering listeners to this show 15% off any order of their ground or full bean rock and roll coffee. Simply add the discount code STV on checkout over at deadskullcoffee.co.uk. And also, if you could, please check out the Straight to Video Patreon page where you can help support this show just that little extra in return for a bonus podcast, early heads up on guests, and some exclusive merch you will not find anywhere else. All of this is over at patreon.com/STVpod. Alright, Carol and T'Pau have a brand new 3D box set out now called The Essential T'Pau, which has all their hits along with a ton of bonus material, live songs, remixes, and 3 brand new tracks, all of which you can find info on over at simply t'pau.co.uk. But before you head out and pick that up, please enjoy my Straight to Video chat with Carol Decker. I've got a bit of a small fascination with the place you were born, place in Liverpool called Huyton, because I'm a big fan of Stuart Sutcliffe, who was the original bass player for the Beatles, and he's actually, well, he spent some time there growing up and he's actually buried there.
Oh, I know that. Well, I left when I was 7. I mean, I can't claim to know Liverpool that well, to be honest, because my family moved to Shropshire when I was 7. But I do have extended family in Liverpool and I do go back from time to time. Sadly, it's usually for a funeral.
We're all getting older now. It's like, wow.
My mum, God bless her, who's gone now, and so is my dad. You know, my mum was one of 7, so there's masses of uncles, aunties, cousins, and a lot of them are still in Liverpool. Not all of them. So I can't claim to know it that well, but I do remember we lived in council flats and there was some scrap land to the side of our block of flats with a really daggy donkey living on this scrap land. So that's all I kind of remember.
Was that a big deal for you, leaving your friends at like 7? Because like you'll have like your best mates when you're at that age and moving to a whole new town.
I don't remember having that many friends, to be honest. It's a bit of a blur. All I can remember of school back in Liverpool, I would have been just about in junior, wouldn't I, age 7, was that the teacher I had was about 150 years old and a right old tartar, and she'd been my mum's teacher, and she was a really horrible bullying woman, and I couldn't tell the time. I couldn't figure out how to tell the time. I just couldn't for ages. And she said really lose her patience with me. Also, I kept picking things up in my left hand and she kept moving them to my right hand and, all that kind of thing. I must have had some friends, but I certainly don't remember who they were. But yes, I do remember feeling really peculiar starting at junior school in Shropshire because I had a turn in my eye. So I had National Health round glasses on with a patch over my left eye. It's how they used to make you strengthen your bad eye.
That's great when you're a kid having something like that. It's like, thank you very much, guys.
Yeah. And I wasn't trendy John Lennon in them. I can tell you, I just looked like a geek. I talk like that. We came from Liverpool and talk like that. And nobody went, oh, she looks really cool. I'll sit by her. And the teacher went, can everybody welcome Carol? Who'd like to sit by Carol? I was like,
oh, no.
I know. So I do remember feeling very uncomfortable and not fitting in for quite a long time, but I do not remember who I left behind.
Weren't both your parents kind of musical in their own ways? Was your dad, could he play piano, and your mum a singer with Littlewoods and Vernon's Pauls? Are the Pauls even a thing these days?
Don't think so. But so my father was a brilliant pianist and he went to Liverpool College of Music and he was a really excellent pianist. He could play jazz, everything. Didn't make it his profession, but he was absolutely fantastic. And I think he got some serious grades at like age 14 or something. He was quite a virtuoso. So as far as the Pauls companies are concerned, they were big employers up in Liverpool back in the 50s. So Littlewoods and Vernon's. And so my mum was a Littlewood songster. So what they had it was like a PR stunt, I suppose. They had a massive choir that were called the Littlewood Songsters. And they were all the Pauls clerks. And they travelled around the country. And I've got pictures of my mum getting on a plane to go to Belfast with a beautiful swagger swing coat and a handbag, and her gloves matched her hat, and she was so smart. And they did a Royal Command performance, and I've got my mum's old autograph book, and she had all the big stars of the day, And then the Vernon's girls were the competition. So whereas the Littlewood Songsters had a choir, the Vernon's girls, there were only 4 of them, and one of which was my good friend Kim Wilde's mom. So me and Kim have that in common, that our mums were both Paul's pop stars.
When did you find that at?
Oh, I can't remember because I've known Kim for like 20 odd years now.
It just came up in conversation one day.
Yeah. Or I think we read each other's interviews and went,
What music was you into growing up? Were there some bands and singers you were a fan of? What was you being exposed to?
Well, when I was really young, I didn't really buddy up to anybody when I was really young. I've got very eclectic taste, and I would hear something on the radio that I really liked. But my parents were always playing music, so I really was influenced by their record collection, which was obviously things like the Stones and the Beatles in the 60s when I was a young kid. And then my father, he never went to an opera. I think he felt intimidated because he was very working class, but he loved opera. So all the great arias were always blasting out. And he loved the big singers like Dinah Washington, Ella Fitzgerald, Barbara Streisand, Shirley Bassey, these big, big divas, And my mom was probably more poppy, like the Beatles and Tremolos and stuff like that, But it wasn't until I kind of got to my teens that I found my own sort of music. And I don't know how I ended up in a rock band because I was a total disco diva. I just loved Chic. I loved Pointer Sisters. I loved Sister Sledge. I can't even remember the names of half of them. Sorry. When I was about 14, I got right into Northern Soul, but my dad wouldn't let me go to any all-nighters, but he would let me go to an all-dayer. They used to be at Stoke-on-Trent, which was about an hour away from where we lived. So he'd drop me off and pick me up like a good old pop. And I knew all the dance routines. So I was very, very dance orientated until I started my own singing, and then I just ended up in a guitar band. It just sort of morphed, who I ended up with and what I ended up doing.
Because I believe it wasn't until after you left school, I think you spent some time, was you like an au pair in Europe, and then later decided to go back to art school, which is when I think doors begin to open up creatively for you. Was being in that whole new environment eye-opening for you, and you could see other possibilities, I guess, outside of a 9-to-5 lifestyle? You'd grown up in that working class background.
Well, my brother and I both passed our 11 plus, and my parents were just super proud of us. because from our background, like nobody went to university or anything like that, And my brother went to the boys' grammar school in Wellington, and I went to Wellington Girls' High School. Mega schools, but really, really super academic. So although I got in, I didn't fit in. So I went through the sausage machine of O-levels and A-levels and stuff, totally screwed up my A-levels. And then my parents moved to Warwickshire, and I stayed on in a friend of theirs sort of box room to stay on into 6-3 to take my A's again. And the couple I was staying with did nothing but row and went on to get divorced, and I was just going out of my mind. So I just left. And then I had family in Holland, and they said, come out here. They had a 5-year-old, they were really busy. So I was sort of au pairing. And then her brother owned a really cool bar in a town called Sitogenbosch, which is just outside Eindhoven. And so I started working in a bar and hanging out in Holland and just enjoying myself. And then at some point I had to come home. And when I came home, I didn't know anyone in Warwickshire. So I went back to Shropshire, where I'd grown up, and I stayed with a friend. And then I started working in a local restaurant. The guy's mom who owned it, he was a bass player, started dating him. My friend went to art school, and she was also 22. She didn't know what to do with herself either. So she went, I'm going to go back to college.
You had an ally.
I didn't know what to do with myself. Lots of people are very focused. Like, for example, my daughter, who's now 23, super focused all her life on art. Wanted to do drawing, digital art and animation. I've got pictures of her from when she was 2 with a pen in her hand, And I was never like that. I was like, I don't know. I just don't know what I want to do. I don't know what to be when I grow up. And I still sort of don't.
Yeah, I'm still figuring it out.
Yeah. So I sort of envy people who are laser focused. And so I followed my friend Melanie back to art school, kind of bluffed my way in with some really shitty sketches. I don't know why they let me in. And you're quite right, in that eclectic environment, I met a different kind of person, and I suddenly found my home. They were artists, photographers, poets, graphic designers, and we were all covered in paint and had scruffy clothes. And I just relaxed. I relaxed. And then I got invited to a party, met a guitarist, and I joined his band.
Was they after a new singer, or was it a new band that was forming?
Yeah, they were. Someone said, come to a party with me. My mate needs a singer. And they literally had heard me always singing along to the radio in the art studio. And I could always sing, and I can harmonise with stuff in a split second, to the point where people say, have you heard that song before? And I go, no. And they go, well, how did you know where the melody was going to go? And I went, I don't know, I just knew. It's like an instinctive called relative pitch, so someone said, and it was a bit like a jokey episode of the old TV show Fame. It's like, why don't you stop annoying us all in here and go and join a band, So I did.
What about the performance side of it? Because that's a whole nother animal.
Took to that like a duck to water. Yeah, I'm just, I was a performer from when I was little. I used to sing, again, I don't really remember this, but when I was little on the bus in Liverpool, I would just start singing, tap dancing on the bus, and people would give me money, probably to shut me up. And I used to sing, my nana, my grandma Decca she was the manageress of a fruit and veg shop. And I used to dance on her counter and entertain the customers. So I just had this kind of really annoying Shirley Temple sort of precocious side to me. The old joke, open the fridge door and do 20 minutes, that kind of thing. So I've always been like that. So before I wasn't shy about the performance at all. Oh, and I was, sorry, to backtrack a little, I was in the drama club at school. Very
cool, very cool. So Ronnie Rogers wasn't in this initial band, right? He was in another band. How did you guys meet? Was that on like the same circuit of this band? Or?
Yeah. He was in another local band. I think it was Gary Davis. You remember the Radio 1 Roadshow? I don't know how old you are.
47, I remember it.
Radio 1 Roadshow used to go all around the country, and they came to Shropshire, and they were doing a gig, a huge farm with a massive barn, and they set up bars and everything, and they were looking for local support. And so my band, the Lasers, were doing like a 40-minute set, and Ronnie's band, the Cats, were also doing a set, and we met there, and we just fancied each other, basically, and started seeing each other. And then I poached him from that band because he's fantastic rhythm guitarist, Ronnie. Really, he's not a lead guitarist, would never pretend to be. Fantastic rhythm guitarist, great voice. And when he fronted his own band, so much charisma, which when he ended up as my kind of wingman, I don't think he got to exploit that really. He has his own band now called the Ronaldos, where he is himself, and he's as equally good a front person as I am.
Was there an instant chemistry between the two of you when it came to writing? Because I think you said, I don't want to say you had no clue, because you could obviously write songs, but you had no particular training. You didn't know what you was doing. You just did what came naturally.
Yeah, self-taught. So neither of us can read music. Obviously, when Ronnie plays the guitar or the keyboard, he can go, A, D, C. He can look at the chords and name them. I can't even do that. I can play them and I know when the notes are right and wrong, but I can't tell you if it's a G or a C. So I always have to have a musician looking over my shoulder, and they interpret it for me or tell me what it is. But like I say, I do have this powerful relative pitch, so I know melodically where I'm going and whether it's right or wrong. So, you know, as long as someone can help me get that down, which Ronnie could. And no, we've always had loads of ideas. I mean, we still write to this day, although he's a lot bossier than he used to be. I used to get my own way a lot more.
Did the two of you set out with any kind of, let's say, plan or blueprint for the future, or was it all about developing your songs and getting a deal for them? Was you like gigging, or was you just shopping your material to labels?
All of that. We were gigging locally. And as you can imagine, this was in the very early 80s. So there was no internet, no Facebook, no building your profile online.
Not building your brand.
Not building your brand, no. And so you just literally gig, try and build a following, try and get someone to come and see you from a record company, which is really hard. They did have in those days regional scouts. So all the big record companies would have an office in Birmingham, maybe an office in Leeds, maybe an office in Wolverhampton. So you'd think, okay, if we get this gig in Wolverhampton, maybe the guy from RCA Birmingham, let's get in touch with his secretary and see if we can get into the gig. So you did it like that, you know, or you try and get a gig in London, which was really hard for us because we lived in Shrewsbury. So, you know, and everybody had a job unless you're on the dole. I was frequently on the dole. So we'd have to wait for everyone to finish work at 6, get in a shitty shower-bang of a van.
Fingers crossed it makes it down the M1.
Yeah, you had to take your own PA and everything. You know, now you rock up and the house has to provide all that, but you take your own PA with you. Take you 3 hours to get to the crappy pub in North London that nobody cared that you were on the stage, and the A&R guy who promised to come didn't turn up.
Just the worst.
It's exhausting, and then you'd be shattered, go all the way back to Shrewsbury and have to get up for work at 7 o'clock in the morning. But we were young, and you have the energy to do it and the enthusiasm, and for the longest time your hope is intact.
Yes, you're not jaded at that time, you're just so focused.
Yeah, it's just like, okay, you know, he didn't come. Okay, what do we do next? You move on, you move forward.
Screw that guy. Yeah. He didn't deserve us.
Yeah.
When did labels actually get interested? Was it quite a long time? Because I mean, I think it was developing your songs for quite a few years, wasn't you?
Well, yeah, eventually we stopped gigging, me and Ron, and we borrowed some money off my dad and we set up a home recording unit and we were sending tapes away. So you would look in the back of the trade rags, and back then it was the Melody Maker and the NME, New Musical Express. And there would be small ads, you know, record company looking for, or, you know, management need, blah, blah, blah. And we just post our stuff off with a little photo that our mate had taken for us, tiny biog, usually handwritten because we didn't have printers or anything, you know, and you send your cassette, it was a cassette. And finally, because obviously this would take a long time, long story short, we got management in London, and that was the key thing. We got London management. He had a London office, and he worked for Harvey Goldsmith, who was the big promoter, and he got us a publishing deal from MCA, and we got $5,000. We thought we'd won the lottery, you know. So we were able to. Ronnie left work. He was a telephone engineer. He left work, and we focused. A year expired. We still didn't have a deal, but Chris, our manager, he did believe in us. He really did. And then MCA dropped us and gave us all our songs back.
Right.
We hadn't written China at that time, but we had written Heart and Soul. We had written Valentine, which was a big hit. I Will Be With You, Monkey. You know, they just went, no, we don't want you anymore. You crap. And here's all your songs.
Wow.
And we were mortified. We were absolutely mortified. Nobody wants us. Why is it so hard for anyone to get us? And then finally we got a deal. We got a showcase in a rehearsal studio. Chris got us a showcase with a Virgin label. So Virgin Records had a bunch of subsidiary labels, one of which was Siren. And we put a band together of a couple of guys we knew from Shropshire that we liked, we'd seen them play, and a couple of London musicians that our manager introduced us to. And we did a little showcase and they signed us on the spot and we were on our way.
Who were your contemporaries at the time? Who were like the other bands who you were like seeing, oh, they're doing good, we could do with a support tour with them? Or was there any bands at the time?
Well, for me, and this is how we got the management deal, I was obsessed, massive girl crush on Chrissie Hynde and the Pretenders. That's my kind of thing. And so they were always in the back of the Melody Maker or the NME on tour, and it would say Harvey Goldsmith proudly presents. So I wrote to Harvey Goldsmith. Now, what I didn't know was you bought onto a tour. So you had to have a record deal and your record company would pay the Pretenders management like $25,000 to get you on that tour. I didn't know that. And in my naivety, I went, dear Mr. Goldsmith, next time you're looking for an opening act, look no further than us. Here's my tape, my picture. And so Harvey obviously didn't do that, but he handed it across to Chris Cook, who was the emergent management arm of his company.
What are the chances that's like a proper...
Right to the wrong person, just do it. I got that ball rolling being naive and innocent. I didn't know it was the wrong thing to do. Now I go, oh, no, you can't do that. Everyone will think you're an idiot. Then I was just like, who's the biggest promoter around here? And he promotes one of my all-time favourite band at the moment. I'm going to write to him. I loved Chrissie Hynde. I loved Joe Jackson. I loved Blondie. God, I'm always put on the spot.
There's some good ones there.
And also I loved Dire Straits, although it wasn't cool to like them at the time. But I just thought Mark Knopfler was the most phenomenal guitarist, and Tunnel of Love, Romeo and Juliet. I love the detail in his playing. So all those kind of early 80s, I love the beat, the photos, all that kind of those indie kind of post-punk bands. And we were not in Shrewsbury, we were on the circuit. So many smaller venues have closed now, but they would come through Shrewsbury and they would either play at Shrewsbury Town Hall or the now gone, sadly, Shrewsbury Arts Centre. And we saw every band on their way up in Shrewsbury. We were not short of entertainment at all.
You get to work with Roy Thomas Baker, famous for producing Queen and The Cars on your first 2 albums.
Yeah.
But I also think you said you would like to have worked with Nile Rodgers too. Did the label basically say, who do you want to work with?
Ronnie took the call with Niall. Niall was very keen. They get the demos. They get sent the demos, the record company. A good A&R man will, it's not just who's the hot name of the day. That's always important, but who's going to bring the best out of you? And because we had like a song like Heart and Soul, which was really quite a little bit funky, they were thinking Niall, but none of our other stuff was sort of like that. We are very eclectic in our style, so hard to put us in a box, which has probably been problematic, I think, as well, And you must remember that China in Your Hand didn't exist, so that was of no influence whatsoever. So Ron took the call with Niall, spoke to him on the phone, and so that was a possibility, and he was really up for it. But Ronnie was a huge Queen fan. I mean, huge. He loved all the huge productions, the harmonies, the melodrama. And I was crazy about that. Was it 1985-6 album by The Cars with the Who's Gonna Drive You Home Tonight, which was used for Live Aid. I loved that. And Roy had just had another massive hit with that. So he was the perfect choice. We were going to get all the drama of Queen, but Roy was still clearly contemporary. So we went with Roy.
Heart and Soul. It was a massive hit in the US. Bands spend years trying to crack America. Was you able to take much of that success in, or was you seeing it all from over here?
We were out there. We were touring. Never had so much fun in my life. Yeah, we got in some funny situations, sticky situations in some backwater towns, I can tell you. So we were just on a bus. America is a continent. And back then, there were 5,000 radio stations. So you could be really hot to trot in California and they might not give a shit in New York. But obviously we got to number 4 in the Billboard chart, which was humongous and a kind of uniform success. But you definitely had different reception across all the different states as to who was interested. So we go somewhere and we were hailed as incoming, the Beatles again, it's a British invasion. And then you go somewhere else and there's about 5 people in the club. So, but we certainly had a lot of fun and a lot of strange experiences.
It's almost a good reality check in a way. You're getting like the highs and the lows all the time. Like it's not all going to your head like, oh, this gig might be good, fingers crossed.
Yeah, and then we were scooped up by MTV, so they wanted us on a lot of their things like, can you come and play cricket on the beach because you're English? They thought we all played cricket all the time, so that was funny. So I played cricket for MTV. And MTV was a hugely powerful medium then.
How is it for you as a recording artist today? I mean, you was part of that whole, like you say, the whole MTV machine, the record industry machine. I think you said you've had frustrations with the whole formatting of radio stations today. 80s stations won't play new songs by artists they love, and current chart stations just want the younger artists. But I guess on the flip side, you have control over your material now, and you have that direct line to your fan base. So are there pros and cons to it all these days?
You have a direct line to your fan base, but it's what I miss about having a big record company budget is where you need the money is for promotion. I can make a record. Ronnie's got a studio. I have a fantastic band. I can get that together, but it's letting everybody know it's out there. And I miss that kind of thrust of, okay, I'll give you an example because, I have my own little label, which is just for my releases now. So I don't have that muscle behind me. So I pay a plugging company to try and get a single played a couple of years ago. And I spent $1,000 in about 3 weeks and got nothing because they can't guarantee anything.
They can get it on the desk, but from that point on, it's up to somebody else.
Exactly. And then you just have to think, well, and then you realise it's not the same as it used to be. When I was a young artist, Radio 1 was the place where we would be played back then. So the DJs were allowed to make their own choice and they would get behind a single of the week. I don't know if folks remember this, so Simon Bates or Mike Reed or Simon Mayo or someone like or Steve Wright would go, hey, I really like that single from Tapao. I'm going to push it. I like it. If you had a friend, you would get through. But now it's completely formatted. But isn't life? Life's formatted, isn't it? In our little silos now, and it's not as much fun as it used to be. But yeah, we still write and we still record. We just had a 56-track box set called The Essential Tapao, which got into the proper official album charts, went to number 8.
That's a massive overview of your career. I mean, it's got the new single Guess Who's Sorry Now on there.
3 tracks. It's got Be Wonderful, Guess Who's Sorry Now, and Run. So it's got 3 new tracks on, which is great. And I've done a licensing deal with Universal for that.
I was going to ask about that, if it was all like the original recordings, and was you heavily involved in compiling it all?
Yeah, they've put a few box sets. So basically, Universal bought out Virgin, Universal and everything, and they own my back catalogue. So they can do all this without my permission if they want. But whoever's in there now, they're great people and they always want my input. And I'm always glad because it's always going to reflect on me, And many years ago, Virgin just shoved out this cheap, shitty greatest hits with a really bad photo that I remember rejecting at the time from the photo shoot. And I was so annoyed.
It makes you wonder why they do that. Sometimes these releases come out and they're just like, there's no thought been put into that. Whereas put together a good package, fans love it.
Because it's somebody who just works there and doesn't give a shit. Right now, the people I work with at Universal, and there's a wonderful woman called Caroline Allen Coyle. She does the kind of, it's like classic artists. She heads that up. She's our age and she cares. She's so respectful. So when we did a box set a few years ago, she and I went to the EMI photo archive and went through shots I've forgotten I'd done. It actually brought tears to my eyes because she said, come on, pick what do you want? So I like to help and they like me to help. And then I said, look, you've had the Virgin Anthology out and Extended Bridge of Spies over the last 5-6 years. You've got to give people something new. So what's different about The Essential Tapao is it's got tons and tons of B-sides, weird extended mixes, odd dance mixes, most of which I hate, folks, I've got to tell you.
I was going to say, does it bring memories coming back when you hear all that old stuff?
But, it's like the extended acid jazz mix of China in Your Hand. Give me a break, But this is what you did. You put a single out and it had all these different mixes. But real diehard fans just love to have their collection complete. So I said, so that's great. So this is different from the other box sets, the other recent box sets. And then we have 3 new tracks that we did on my label, Natfish, download only. And I've licensed them to Universal. So you have updated stuff as well, which I think is great value for money. And I gave them all the new pictures. I worked on the design. So I'm really proud of it.
It's great that you've got that relationship now and you have got not necessarily full control over your songs, but you have got that line to it.
Yeah, not over the original recordings. What a lot of artists do, because what you're at liberty to do once your deal's expired is I could, if I wanted to, go into a studio and re-record them all. But I can't imagine recapturing what Roy did, so I wouldn't want to try.
Many thanks to Carol Decker of Tapao for chatting with me here on the Straight to Video podcast. If you grew up during the 80s, then I'm sure you'll agree you could not ignore her voice and amazing songs back then, and it's great to know she's still out performing. Her voice is still killer, and hopefully there'll be some live shows and a tour announced soon. In the meantime, check out tapao.co.uk for all up-to-date info, and the new 3-CD box set, The Essential Tapao, is out now. If you're new to the show or just want to catch up on previous episodes of this podcast, then they're all available to listen to over at stvpod.com or on your favourite podcast platform. Just be sure to follow or subscribe, and if you can review over at Apple Podcasts, that will go a long way in spreading the word. So until we chat again, thanks so much for your time and support, and I look forward to talking again real soon.